Hopefully the sound works here. I guess I should do a sound check. I guess that's what you do when you're a pro, which I'm not. But just wanted to have a quick, and again, I'll try and keep it reasonably short. I could go for hours, but I'll try not to. Um, that's the poster in the background is from The Wall, the movie. I may leave that poster up. I should cycle through these posters to kind of mark the time as it passes in this whole guitar focused journey. I guess I'm supposed to hold a guitar or something so I look more wistful, right? I'll pick my guitar up at least so you'll know that it's still a guitar video. How about that? Here. Hi, welcome to Guitar Talk with KegTube. So anyways, yeah, I recently did a version of Mother, Pink Floyd's Mother, from Pink Floyd The Wall. I think I'm gonna post this video probably after it, so that it makes sense. Once you listen to the song, hopefully you listen to the song. Hopefully you subscribe. Have a bit of a talk, and I'm doing it separately because I can't quite decide sometimes if it's boring as hell to hear me talk, or if maybe that's better than the guitar playing. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I think I'd like to do more talk, but I'm really here to play guitar. So you can hear me talk. You just got to give me a call or stop by and have a coffee, and we can talk all day about music. I love nothing better than to talk about music or play it or whatever. So I better pick up a notch here. So on the weekend, I was hanging out with my wife, and I think we were getting ready for our Christmas festivities. And I put after I played Mother, I put a Pink Floyd playlist on Spotify. Had it going in the living room while we were wrapping presents or something. And an iconic Pink Floyd song came on. I can't remember which one it was. It was either Mother or Comfortably Numb, or I think, no joke, I think it was Another Brick in the Wall. Hey, teacher, leave them kids alone. Bum bum ba da da bum bum ba da da bum bum. That song came on. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall, right? And came on Spotify, and my wife was like, "Oh, that's a cool song. Who's singing? Who is that? Who is that plays that? I like it." And I was like, I'm hard on my wife when it comes to music, because I mean she knows I like music. I'm surrounded by music all the time. She's like, "Who is that?" And I kind of was like, "How do I answer this?" So I said back to her, "Well," I said, "Okay." I said, "Name me 5 bands from the 70s, and I'm sure you'll get it." And I said, "No, spoiler alert, it's not the Rolling Stones, it's not the Beatles." And the other one she came up with, I said, it's not I was being silly. I said, "It's not the Bee Gees." She said, "Oh, I could guess Bee Gees." I said, "Yeah, I bet you could." But I said, "Name me some other." She's like, "I don't know, Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath." I'm like, "Wow, that's actually pretty good." I said, "It's not Led Zeppelin." She said, "Oh yeah, Led Zeppelin. It's not Stairway to Heaven." But I said, "Keep going." I said, "If you think of some more bands from the 70s, another band from the 70s." Her answer was it the Eagles? It's not the Eagles. I said, "Actually, those are good guesses." But I said, no, it's Pink Floyd." And she said, "Oh, Pink Floyd." And I went into this spiel about why Pink Floyd's important. Why are they important? Well, have you heard of Dark Side of the Moon? Dark Side of the Moon came out in, I believe, 1975. And it's been on the top 100 of Billboard ever since it came out. Like, second only to, I'm saying, Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin 4. It's withstood the test of time. Oh, one of her other answers from the 70s was Metallica, and I just let that one go, because I was like, that's a good answer, but Metallica didn't start till the 80s. But anyways, yeah, Dark Side of the Moon is epic, huge, and I'm like, man, if you were around in the 70s or know music from the 70s, you must have had a stab at Dark Side of the Moon. I'm talking about The Wall today. Pink Floyd The Wall. And I got some factoids from Wikipedia and that, because I was trying to not get my stories wrong. But I thought it came out in 1980. They're saying 79. I think maybe it was recorded in 79. But okay, Pink Floyd The Wall. Pink Floyd The Wall is a concept album. The 70s was full of them. This was one of the last, 1980, concept record, meaning a 2 LP. And I've got a double LP here. I wish I could get this. Someone wants to get me something for Christmas, i.e. my wife, I could find a copy of The Wall on LP, I'd be just tickled pink. So this is a Pearl Jam double LP. And this one actually has fold outs and stuff. So it actually folds right out. But the thing about a double LP is a record, an LP has two sides. So you got two sides, and it was a double. So that gives you four sides. So why I say this is a concept album is because it's got four parts. It's a story, and it all ties together. And it's an autobiographical story for sure. The idea being that there's a character in it, and he's called Pink. And the joke about Pink Floyd fans, and you hear it in some of their songs, is which one's Pink? Which of these guys is named Pink Floyd? Is it Pink and is another guy Floyd, like Alice Cooper? Alice Cooper is the character. Well, Pink Floyd, that's not the case. There's not a guy named Floyd. It's not like that. It's just the name of the band, right? The joke being, which one's Pink? Well, so in this record, there's a character. The character in the record is Pink. And that's played by, and it's in the persona of Roger Waters. Roger Waters wrote most of this. And it's a compilation of him and his partner Syd Barrett. Now, Syd Barrett, Pink Floyd in the 60s, this guy was schizophrenic and he left the band because he couldn't cope with life in a band and touring. He was, they said, the heart of Pink Floyd. Well, Pink Floyd from the 60s, you can't listen to that. So as soon as he left, Roger Waters and Doug Gilmour get together and they make Pink Floyd. And Pink Floyd's wicked. Pink Floyd's 1970. Okay, The Wall's in 1979. It's produced by Bob Ezrin. Now, if you Google Bob Ezrin, there's a long list of. Have you heard of Kiss Destroyer? He made Kiss Destroyer. He's Alice Cooper. He's Deep Purple. He's Peter Gabriel. He's Andrea Bocelli. He's the Deftones. He's T Swift. Some of Taylor Swift's work is Bob Ezrin. Rod Stewart. Berlin, Kansas. 9 Inch Nails. Kim Mitchell. All those guys were produced by Bob Ezrin. Alice Cooper did a lot of work with him in the 70s, described him as their George Martin. Now, if you don't know who George Martin is, Google that too. Spoiler alert, he's heavily involved in the Beatles. Look at the new documentary on Disney+. I'm just saying. You heard of Kiss Destroyer? Well, that was Bob Ezrin made that. And he made it what it is. Genius level. So it's a 2 CD, it's a 2 CD. Because I bought it in the 90s. I jumped on in the 90s when I was in university, and it was on CD, and it was one of the early CDs I bought. I bought the Division Bell when that Keep Talking came out with the Stephen Hawking overdubs, and then I got Pink Floyd The Wall next, and it's been a good purchase, and I've listened to it a lot. What's good? Okay, so Pink Floyd was almost bankrupt at the time, so they were huge in the 70s, but they come out almost bankrupt. They weren't getting along. As soon as this tour was done, David Gilmour, and Roger Waters left very soon after. The band was not getting along. They were almost broken up. They were almost bankrupt. And they made this epic 4-part concept story. And people at the time were like, what is this? We don't know what this is. And Bob Ezrin came along and busted it down into pieces that flowed together, so the songs tell the story, and it's epic and it's huge. What they say about Pink Floyd is true. Your best, if you're gonna get into The Wall, I insist you sit in a darkened room. You can be on whatever drug you want. I'm not going there, but be in a dimly lit room. Maybe have a drink in your hand. And you put your headphones on. You put your best headphones on. And the bigger the better. And you crank it. Just crank it. Shut your eyes. Lay on your bed in the dark. And you turn this on. They're very acutely aware of the audio. 4-directional sound. Full stereo. Some of the songs are over this side. Some of the songs are over this side. They'll cross over. They'll go forward and back. It's so immersive. You can imagine now. I've never done drugs, ever. Nothing stronger than a Tylenol 3. But you can see if you got high and you crank this, the sonic movements in this record, you could trip really bad because it's very immersive. The story is very cinematic. It's very emotional. And the core of the story is basically a guy who's had trauma in his childhood, brings that into his adulthood, and it haunts every relationship in his life. And the story is that he's a world famous musician who's still suffering from trauma, and he can't get his act together, and he's quietly going crazy. He's very successful, but still has all his childhood trauma with him and can't cope. And he melts down. He goes crazy. There's this thing, and it's in the record, where you hear a phone get picked up, and there's a call being made from England to the States, or the States to England, I don't recall, where there's no one answers. And he's phoning home. He's phoning his wife, or girlfriend, and just the phone's ringing. And that's all you hear is some background music and the phone's ringing. Well, a man picks up. Oh, hello, and he's phoning his wife. So he loses it, melts down, and he goes off into the blue yonder, like descends into craziness, madness, basically. The four sides are very compartmentalized. The first part is about his childhood, and that's where another thing. If you're not going to listen to the whole CD, if you're not going to listen to the whole thing, what you need to do, if you want to dabble in this, is listen to Another Brick in the Wall, Part 1, Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2, Another Brick in the Wall, Part 3. It's a 3-part song. The first part is very gentle and very calming, and it's just a nice rhythm, and you hear the children in the park. And it's children on a playground. And then all of a sudden there's helicopters, and it's the voice of his teacher through a bullhorn saying, "Stand up against the wall. You laddie, stand up against the wall." It's very like, and it's the, you got to realize these guys are of that age. These guys, where they were born and lived in post-war England. London after World War II was flattened by German bombs. And that's what these guys, the Stones and the Beatles, they all grew up in that post-war London where times were pretty lean. They were destroyed by the war, bankrupted by the war, and London and England had to dig themselves out of flattened towns by German bombs. Post-war was pretty grim, pretty tight. Lots of them will talk about into the 50s, there was rationing, and there was a very tightly, anybody you know from England in the 50s and the 60s will tell you there was a class structure, and you did not get out of your class. You started in your class, and you stayed in your class. If your daddy worked in the coal mines, you're going to the coal mines. If your dad was a doctor, you were most likely going to be a professional. And that stayed for a long time. I believe well into the 80s, they still had these placement exams. And if you didn't do well on a placement exam, you were going to trade school. You were going to be a tradesperson. If you did do better, you could get into university. And that's kind of the way it worked. And that's the way it stayed. And there's a lot of people fled because it wasn't a meritocracy. It was, England was built on class structure. And if you tried to get out of your class, the walking hammers come along and will beat you back down into your class. And that's the way it is. So side 1 is his childhood, and it sounds nice, and then it goes kind of ugly. Side 2, the song I played, Mother, I think is on the end of side A, side 1. And it's about his childhood and how Mother's going to keep everything dirty and painful away from you. Mother's also going to keep you under her wing. She won't let you fly, but she might let you sing. She's going to look after you, and I think it's a metaphor for Mother England, is going to look after you, don't worry, but it's also going to stifle you, and it's going to put you in your cage. And the masses are going to trample you until you toe the line. It's very interesting. So it starts with, the end of side A is Mother, and that's the song I played where it just sort of turns. Side 2, one of the songs is One of My Turns. I can feel one of my turns coming on. Where his depression, his bottoming out into probably booze, pills, women, etc. Then Another Brick in the Wall kicks in, part 3. And that's the, hey, teacher, leave those kids alone, right? that he's growing up and he's like, you can't do this to these kids. You can't stick these kids in there. You're ruining these kids' hopes and dreams. That's at the end of side 2. Now side 3, songs like Hey You, Nobody Home, Bring the Boys Home. Okay, but this is kind of wonky stuff from songs from the 40s and the hit parade, but it ends with Comfortably Numb. Comfortably Numb is he's a performer in a band and he's spaced out on drugs just to be numbed. His trauma is with him, his pain and his sadness is all being self-medicated by drugs to get him through his concert, so he can continue to make $1 million. That's kind of where side 3 ends up. Side 4, songs like The Show Must Go On, Run Like Hell, and Waiting for the Worms. So my song the song Mother that I played is Should I Build a Wall? And Mother says, of course Mother's going to help build the wall. Mother's going to help you wall yourself up from the world. And that's part of the stoicism. I know my parents were born in 45. Their parents had been through the Depression. Like, you're trained not to be emotional. Stoicism. Put up the walls. Keep the world out. Protect yourself. Right? And he's kind of gets through that. And at the end, the way the record ends off, he's broken down the wall finally. And there's even the worms, the control people. There's a trial. And they try him with things like trying to express himself. And, they have this mock trial and it gets a bit wonky. But so out of all of that mess, it's like his childhood, his trauma, his descent into madness, him medicating himself, and eventually he gets himself free. He breaks the wall down and emerges like a butterfly from a caterpillar, right? So that's why it's very important to me. And I tell you, I listened to this when my very first big real paycheck. I put an amp and subs in my little Sunbird, and we would crank this, and it would be mega loud, and you could be immersive. I also remember I'd put this on headphones, and I used to play NHL hockey on my Super Nintendo in the 90s. I'd sit down and basically I wanted to play Super Nintendo all day. That was my goal. So this was a good long record. So I could put these CDs in my 5-disc changer, and it would go for about 2 hours, right? But there's a lot of songs in here that are barely songs. They just kind of move the plot forward. But there's some pretty huge songs in here. Mother's good. Comfortably Numb is good. And of course, Another Brick in the Wall. So I don't know. I get very excited about Pink Floyd. Bands like this that are huge, that had a giant cinematic, emotional, they had a plan, and they made it to fruition. And it's in many ways a perfect record. It's perfect. It's just it tells a story. And those kind of things aren't done very often anymore. And they led the way as far as sonics and audio. And it was very immersive. And like I say, I can't blame people that wanted to maybe smoke a joint and dim the lights and just trip to this story of craziness and numbing yourself and self-medication and all that. I think it's very good. And another point is, like, I got onto this when I was in my 20s. It's very interesting. Music that's good, I viewed it very differently. When I was 20, I was feeling lost, and I was feeling depressed, and I was feeling sad, and I probably did medicate a little bit with a bit too much booze and drugs and partying. Doing drugs, but I had my share of liquor to kind of numb the pain. And you feel alone, and you don't fit, and nothing seems right, and you're trying to find your place when you're 20s. And there was times when I did feel depressed, and I would sit in my room on my bed with this cranked and listen to them singing about going crazy, and I could relate to this. He's gone mad. And then at the end, as I'm older, I'm almost 50 now. I've been saying that for a while. I'm almost 50. But it still holds up. It's really good. And you can see it from the long view of when you've got kids, you can see it in their eyes, them trying to find their way. And things of that nature. So I just think that's why it's important, and that's why I like it. And I forget that people don't share my views, and people don't don't know who Pink Floyd is, maybe. My son, who's 12, he's never heard of this. He's never heard of Pink Floyd. I hope he'll listen to it someday, and I hope I can pass it on. So I think I'm going to leave that poster up for a while and go that way. Have a good day.